Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. Four Sigmatic was founded with the goal of cutting through all the hype and helping people eat more of the world's most scientifically studied superfoods, like mushrooms. I absolutely love this stuff. They sent me over a box of a lot of their mushroom products, and I was a little skeptical at first, but after using them, I've really come to like them. They taste awesome. They're super convenient. They come in 10 little packets in each pack, and mushrooms have an adaptogenic property. It's really cool. Helps restore your hormones, balance your energy naturally, and feel awesome. All right, so head on over to foursigmatic.com. That's FOURSIGMATIC. Use the code word PaleoHacks at checkout and you save 15% off all purchases. Paleo Hackers, welcome back. Happy Thursday. My guest on the other end is Dr. Doug McGuff. Doug is an emergency room physician, author of the popular book Body by Science. He owns and operates Ultimate Exercise, and he's here today to talk about his crazy intense slow workouts. Dr. Doug, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, that's not the crime dog. I'm like the crime dog minus the R. That's McGuff.
Oh, you're McGruff, correct?
Nope, McGuff.
McGuff, okay.
There you go.
There we go. We're on it now.
Yeah.
So I was Googling my guest before the show, and the first thing that popped up for you, boom, was Dr. Doug's workout. And I'm like, okay, what is this? And it has over 100,000 views, and I'm watching it, and I thought the thing was in slow motion, but everyone around you was moving at normal speed, and I just realized you were moving really slow and shaking, and your biceps were pulsing, and I mean, it was really captivating, and I've never seen anyone work out like that before.
Yeah, that must have been from the Renex convention. Was it the one where I ended up laying on the floor?
I think it was just in your gym, because I was looking at other videos as well, and you had a few more in there.
Okay.
So the slow workout, based on what I was researching, is kind of your approach to high intensity interval training, correct? It's more of a slower approach than the traditional, okay, run out, do sprints as fast as you can, 10 out of 10 running from a lion, or do burpees until you're blue in the face and puke everywhere. You take a bit more of a different approach.
Yeah, it's a different path to the same destination. And what you saw on the internet, the slowness was just part of the protocol. The thing to remember is that when you're doing intense exercise, basically what you are doing is you're providing a load onto working musculature that results in a rapid and deep level of fatigue. And we found that one of the best ways to do that, and by we, I don't mean me. This is not originated by me. It's not my deal. There are a lot of people that were devoted to this a long time before I came along that developed it. But the proverbial we, our approach with this is that the protocol itself, the use of resistance, is applied to the body in such a way where the movement by necessity is slow. What happens is we use equipment in a manner of loading where the upload of moving the weight is very gradual and slow. And that deprives you of being able to use any momentum to lift the weight. And that necessarily results organically in very slow movement, because you literally, once you start slowly with a meaningful resistance appropriately loaded on the muscle, you can't go fast. And as a consequence, you've deprived yourself of momentum. So the weight, the resistance is continuously on the muscle. There's no escaping it. And therefore, the rate and depth of fatigue is very, very rapid.
Okay.
That rapid development of fatigue also enacts all of the metabolic subsystems that produce that big metabolic kick that you get from other forms of high-intensity exercise, whether that's high-intensity interval training, CrossFit, anything else that involves a high output of work. The difference is that the work we use to get there is done with weight training, with resistance, but done with a protocol that is very slow to continuously load the muscle, but also to make the movement safer. With these other high-intensity protocols, what's happening is you're using fairly rapid and ballistic movement that you continue as you fatigue. And as a result, that makes you at very high risk for injury. Whereas with our protocol, as you fatigue, you're actually becoming too weak to continue to move the weight. So actually, as you fatigue and the set continues and the exercise session continues, it's getting safer and safer rather than more and more dangerous, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, how did you stumble upon all this, being because you're a current emergency room physician, correct?
That's correct.
And so how did you come on to this whole slow training, high-intensity interval?
Okay, well, the thing is, my interest in this, to a very large extent, predated my being a physician or involved in medicine in any way. I actually got started in high-intensity strength training when I was about age 14. At the time, I was a bicycle motocross racer, which is a type of sprint racing. It's a power sport. And I had taken up weight training on my own as a means of training for the sport. I was actually out doing sprints one day when I ran into a middle-aged guy who was in really great shape. I ended up talking to him. He had just opened a Nautilus gym, and this is back in the mid to late 70s. And that was kind of, the origins of this high-intensity type training. And even back then, even though it was not a super slow protocol like what we use now, it was, weight training based. The movements were slow and controlled. The emphasis was on deep fatigue, training to failure, and a big metabolic wallop. And I bartered janitorial services for a membership to this guy's gym. And there I found writings of Arthur Jones, the guy that originated Nautilus. The slow movement portion of it actually began around 1983 when an employee of Nautilus, Ken Hutchins, started researching the training protocol for an osteoporosis research study. And the intent was originally to just be very, very cautious with these frail elderly women. But the unintended side effect of it was they actually saw a greater rate of progress than what they were used to seeing in standard trainees. And they thought, well, maybe it's just because these women are so frail and making up lost ground. But when they applied the protocol to younger athletic populations, they saw also a faster rate of improvement. And that's kind of what served as the germ for what is developed into the kind of protocol that we do now.
Okay. Being an exercise physician, I'm sure you're looking through a lot of science, and it's the peer-reviewed research science. And then also owning your own strength and conditioning gym. I'm sure you've seen the internet go with kind of more of the bro science and kind of, eat big to get big and all these myths who, I don't know if they work or not, but I'm curious from your perspective, what are kind of some of the biggest myths you see out there floating around, maybe when it comes to muscle building or exercise or any in that realm?
Yeah, here's the deal. I mean, all the way back into the 1970s, the bro science always wins because what we do is we have an idea in our head, particularly when we're younger bros, of how we want to look and who we want to emulate. And those are the people that we seek out for advice. And many times those are the people that have succeeded in spite of what they're doing rather than because of what they're doing. So there's a natural selection bias for exercise protocols that have worked for the people that look the way we want to look, that by definition will not work for the greater mass of the population, more represented under the big part of the bell curve. So in my day, when you looked at Muscle Builder magazine, it was all the routines of, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, and, it was double split routines, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 6 days a week. if you took that sort of protocol and applied it to your average young man of average genetic capabilities without the benefit of anabolic steroids to enhance recovery, that was a massive fail. I mean, you just wound up completely overtrained. Over time, you became weaker and actually lost muscle. And at the time, we thought that exercise is what produced the change, not realizing that the body's adaptive mechanisms is what produced the change. So instead of realizing that we needed to back off, do less volume, have more recovery, we actually doubled down on the process and made it even worse. So probably the biggest myth that persists is that the people to seek advice from are the ones you want to look like, and that their advice is good and applicable across a broad range of a population. So that
they just might
people end up doing exactly the opposite of what they should be doing to get the results that they're after.
Okay, so those people might just be far on the bell curve then, might have either genetic thing or the anomalies.
Absolutely, that's true in any endeavor. You can read all the books you want by Warren Buffett about investing, and probably be no better off in the investing world than if you'd never read him. You can read all the training advice you ever want to get from, Lance Armstrong or a world-class endurance athlete, and that information applied to the average individual that's more in the middle of the bell curve would have no relevance and actually produce negative results. And the problem is not that there's not enough information out there. If information was, Derek Sivers, a guy that I follow, actually coined this phrase. This is like, if information was the solution, then we would all be billionaires with six-pack abs. But we're not. So, I think that's just a big problem and we talk about this in the book about Body by Science is, we apply the wrong heuristic when we're trying to solve our problems.
Yeah. I love that quote by Derek Sivers. I listened to that same show. I think that was a Tim Ferriss one, right?
Yeah.
That was a great one. Yeah. Billionaires with six-pack abs walking around, just ripped out of our minds.
There you go.
So there's an action component, certainly, but let's talk about kind of what to do, what to take action on, and your approach to muscle building. How do you go about, let's just take your average 20-something, 30-something guy. He's looking to get in the gym. He's looking to build muscle. What would you tell that person?
Well, the first thing you got to get them to understand is that the exercise regimen they're going to use is only the stimulus. Exercise by itself cannot directly produce anything other than injury. Exercise can directly produce injury, but it cannot directly produce results. You have to realize that your exercise is a negative, threatful stimulus that you bring to the body. And the body, having received that threatful stimulus, if given enough time and resources, will make the adaptive response that you seek. So the stimulus that is actually driving the sought-after adaptive response is loading and fatiguing the muscle, making it in a very short span of time significantly weaker. That rapid weakening of muscle in a short span of time is a threatful stimulus. The body, having received that stimulus, then makes the adaptive response, which is to become stronger. So if it ever encounters a fatiguing stimulus of that magnitude again, it's going to have something left over. And then that process is done on a repeated basis. So the first is to understand that exercise is a stimulus. The second thing that I would tell this person is we all want to be superhuman. The 4-Hour Body sitting on the shelf right behind you there. You have Driven, you have Arnold Schwarzenegger,
right.
You have Switch, you have Tony Robbins. But the thing that I have to really hammer home to people is to realize that if you want to be superhuman, you have to realize that you are only human. And what that means is for the young person embarking upon this strength and conditioning program is that the intensity, yes, needs to be high, but the volume of work that you do needs to be much lower than you imagine. And the frequency of the workout needs to be much less frequent than you have in your head. Because you have to allow the body enough time to make its compensatory response. If you want to put just 1 pound of muscle on your body, you need to really think about that. Next time you go to the grocery store, pick up a pound of ground round meat and look at it and say, this is what I'm asking my body to synthesize de novo based on this stimulus. You have to realize that takes some time, some uninterrupted rest period to allow your body the capability to synthesize this. If we think of the workout as digging a hole in the ground and the adaptive response is filling the hole back up plus a little bit more on top, you got to realize that if you go back and start digging again before you have filled up, you just dig a deeper and deeper hole. So hit it hard, hit it intensely, but keep it brief and keep it infrequent enough so that you can show improvement on a workout by workout basis.
Great answer. And do you prescribe any like X amount of days per week or X amount of days off kind of thing, like a 2 days on, 4 days off training regimen, or does it vary per person?
Yeah, I don't get prescriptive because you do have to realize that when you're talking to a broad audience, you are speaking to a bell curve. And in that bell curve, you're going to have people out on the fat tails. And the people out on the fat tail of the bell curve are the ones that are really going to get fantastic results and be paid attention to, and that's going to undermine your message. So I will offer a general time frame that I think will work for most people that are within 2 standard deviations of the mean. And what I would tell most people is that at a meaningful level of resistance, 2 times a week is going to be good. Out to 1 time a week is a starting point.
Hey guys, Clark here. 40%. That is the amount of DNA we share with fungi. In fact, lots of pharmaceutical drugs are made from mushrooms, such as penicillin. That's why Four Sigmatics has put together a mushroom blend, superfood drinks, so you can harness and tap into the power of mushrooms and fungi. I've been drinking their hot cocoa at night with reishi mushroom, I believe it has. Really does melt away the stress, and the adaptogens can help go to the weakest part of your body and boost you up naturally. So head over to Four Sigmatic, that's FOURSIGMATIC.com. Use Paleo Hacks at checkout and save 15%. All right, back to the show. So when someone hears, 1 time or 2 times a week, I mean, when I hear that, I'm kind of shocked because that's a lot less than the typical 4, 5, even 6 times a week prescription. And someone who's trying to maybe build muscle or lose weight, they say, I'm already doing 4, 5, 6 times a week. Why would I do less? I'm still not getting the results on my 4 or 5 time a week program. Why would I go to 1 or 2 a week? That seems counterintuitive.
Because like what we just talked about, you are not allowing enough time for the body to make its response. You have to remember the results you want are not produced by the exercise. It's not like you're pumping up a bicycle tire. The results you want are synthesized by your body when you're resting and not working out. And the natural tendency is when you're not seeing the results forthcoming is to double down and do more. You have to do exactly the opposite. You got to bring the intensity to a meaningful level so the workout is short. And by short, I mean 15 to 30 minutes tops. If you can go longer than that, you're not working hard enough.
Wow.
And then once you've done that, you got to allow enough rest days to fully supercompensate so that the next time you come to work out, if you're using the same resistance as the previous workout, it's going to feel easy to you. Or you can progress the resistance and do just as well. If you're not seeing that on a workout by workout basis, then you need to space your recovery out a little bit longer.
Okay.
And most people are just operating under the assumption of not really understanding this stimulus-organism response equation. Exercise is the stimulus, acts upon your body, the organism. The organism produces the adaptive response during the rest period. If you bring the exercise back to the organism before it's completed its response, you will interfere with the response. And that's what most people are doing when they're training 5 or 6 times a week.
What about the guy who's kind of doing the 5 or 6 times a week, 45 minutes to an hour long workout, but he's not really pushing it? Would you say that person's just maintaining kind of an even level, or is that still detrimental as well?
Potentially, but anyone that's working out, anyone that's partaking of a workout that lasts that long is probably logging a lot of, for lack of a better term, just F around time in the gym.
Right.
Okay, so when I train clients at Ultimate Exercise, we record their performance with a stopwatch, not by counting repetitions. So we know how long in seconds it took them under that given resistance to reach complete muscular fatigue.
Huh.
And we get a time under load. And we move them quickly from one exercise to the next so that the workout takes maybe 12, 15 minutes. And it's all they can stand. Now, if I go down to, the college gym or a local commercial gym and I watch your average bro in the gym working out, he'll walk up to the dumbbell rack, pick something up, do his set, and if I record just his time under load while working out over his 45-minute to an hour-and-a-half workout, he picks up the weights, he does a set, I press the start button, and then I press the stop button. The set average is going to last 15 or 20 seconds. And then he's going to walk around, he's going to flip through his iPhone, he's going to check his email, he's going to go get a drink of water. He's going to stare at some girl's ass. And then he's going to come back to the dumbbell rack and pick it up again. Then I'll start the stopwatch again. And if I record the total cumulative time under actual load of his 45-minute workout and add it all up, it may be actually significantly less than the time under load of one of my clients that gets in and out in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of screw around time in that devoted 45 minutes to an hour that is really non-productive and, if anything, counterproductive in terms of just wasting his valuable time, not invoking a level of intensity enough to cross a stimulus threshold to make your body adapt, but then also accumulating a volume of work in terms of just total workload that kind of rags you out and makes it hard to recover, even though you've never really crossed an intensity threshold to demand a change.
I see. So then the question people are probably thinking at home is, okay, well, what do these workouts consist of? What is Doug timing them on? So what are some exercises you're running a typical client through when they come in and train at your gym?
Yeah. So, this can be done with any kind of weight training equipment, but we actually use machines, which, in the paleo world is kind of a big no-no, but we actually use machines that are specially modified for our protocol, but they're very simple and straightforward. You can find them in any gym. Let's say we're going to pick 5 movements, the ones we recommend in the book, and these aren't magical movements, just 5 movements that will cover the whole body. So you can do a leg press, a horizontal pulling motion like some sort of row, a horizontal pushing motion, some form of chest press, a vertical pulling motion, either a chin up or some sort of pull down, and an overhead pressing movement, a vertical pressing movement. That will cover all the major musculature of your body, but you do it in a very specific way. Each set, when you upload the effort against the weight, it's done very, very gradually so that the weight barely starts moving. The first inch of the movement ought to take about 3 seconds.
Huh.
And then once you've done that, you just try to keep the weight moving, because once you've deprived yourself of the initial momentum, like the way most people start a set, very hard to go fast. So what you then focus on is just contracting the musculature involved in that movement as hard as you can so that you can keep the weight moving. Once you get to the end of the positive excursion, you just smoothly turn around and lower it very, very slowly. As slowly as you can without it deteriorating into a series of stops and starts. You get to the bottom, and then you change directions again very gradually. And you do that continuously until you get this panicky feeling like, you're going to get crushed by it. And it goes against your instincts, but you just try to keep the same form and high level of effort until all of a sudden you're too weak to keep the weight moving anymore. You still attempt to move it even though movement is stopped. And by that time, you've driven a very, very deep level of fatigue in the targeted musculature. You finish that movement, then probably in less than 30 seconds, you're going to initiate the next. And that's where you get that high-intensity interval effect of the stacking of these metabolic waste products as you move from one exercise to the next. But you just blast through your whole workout just like that. And I promise you, done that way, you'll be on your second movement wondering, how am I going to make it to the end?
Yeah.
And by the time you're done, you will definitely not want any more.
Yeah. So you said earlier you go on time, not reps.
Yeah, now that's just peculiar to my own facility. Training yourself is much, much easier to go on reps. And as long as you are falling within a meaningful time frame, so if we're talking a set duration, it can be anywhere from 45 seconds to 2 minute set duration. That's going to produce the level of fatigue to be a stimulus. And that could be, depending on the cadence that you end up using with a particular piece of equipment, it could be anywhere from 4 seconds up, 4 seconds down, to 10 seconds up, 10 seconds down. That could be anywhere from 4 to 10 repetitions, depending on the movement that you're using. But the absolute number of reps or the time under load is not really important. What is really important is the intent that you bring to the exercise. And that intent is to do this in the hardest way possible so that the muscle is continuously loaded and you produce a rapid and deep level of fatigue. Basically, you just want to make it as hard as it can possibly be.
Okay.
And then let the rest just hash itself out. And really, the recording of it and all the accounting and the anal retentiveness doesn't matter. Your body knows what to do with that. You put that into the black box, the output, if you give it enough rest time, will be what you want.
And so what are some results a client has gotten for using this method at your gym?
Well, it depends upon the client. I mean, it's odd. The clients that have the genetic propensity to actually have visually impactful muscle growth seem always to me to be the ones that didn't want that in the first place. That will bitch about, oh, I had to buy a new wardrobe sort of thing. The clients that come there desperately wanting to gain muscle are the ones that tend to not have the genetic predisposition to do so. And they will get somewhat more muscular and their appearance will change, what I think is much more for the better, but they tend to be dissatisfied with their muscle gains. The thing is I or anyone else really does not have much control over what your response is going to be in terms of aesthetics. What we tell people is we're like the Army, is we'll make you all you can be, but that's all. But on a bigger scale, the things that I'm more proud of are the people that come in that are grossly obese, that for the first time ever have been able to actually lose body fat, and not in the way that they thought they would have to, running or jogging for miles on end or, doing some Biggest Loser kind of routine. If you wake up the musculature by strengthening it, two things happen. One is you have become very adept at emptying the largest glucose reservoir in your body. Once you do that, you restore insulin sensitivity. Their serum insulin levels fall to a level where fat loss is now permissive, and then it becomes much, much easier for them. And then these are the type of people that are on oral hypoglycemics for type 2 diabetics that, through proper training and paying attention to a paleo-type diet, all of a sudden are cured and they've lost 70 or 80 pounds of body fat. Those are the big successes. In terms of wanting to get buff, that's pretty much dictated by a person's genetics. But even so, even though a lot of people may not get as big as what they want to be or what they've envisioned for themselves through the magazine, I can say that almost anyone can obtain a degree of muscularity that would be impressive to almost anyone. It may not be what they want, but it is certainly going to be something meaningful.
Okay. And without getting into the diet, real quick, what's kind of like a sample workout that someone can do and try this method at their local gym if they were curious? Would you recommend that?
Yeah, I mean, they can just, if they just go on the bodybyscience.net website, there's a whole string of YouTube videos up there. You can kind of watch a workout. But I would just pick 5 big basic compound movements to give it a try. And that would be just like we talked about, a leg press, some sort of rowing machine, a chest press machine, a chin up or pull down movement, and then some sort of overhead pressing movement. Just do those 5 things in the manner that we described. Just slow, controlled, continuous load, deep fatigue, complete muscle failure, move from one to the other quickly, get in, get out, and give yourself several days of recovery to come back and try it again. Repeat that a few times and see how you feel. I think you'll really be impressed.
Okay. And where do sprints come into this at all? Have you experimented with adding in a sprint routine maybe once a week or something?
Yeah, I have, and I have found it to be useful, particularly for people that either because of their genetic makeup require a longer recovery interval between workouts, or as a person becomes more advanced in this kind of training, out of necessity, you have to increase the recovery interval, because the stronger you become, the more metabolic punishment you can bring to yourself. So in order to continue the muscular progress along, you may have to bump your workout to every 7th day, even some extreme subjects out to every 9th or 10th day. The problem with that is skeletal muscle tissue takes a long time to build, and it also takes a long time to deconstruct. However, the metabolic adaptations that come along with this sort of exercise, they ramp up more quickly, but they also ramp down more quickly. So for someone that requires a longer recovery interval, some sort of either sprints or high-intensity interval training inserted between the 2 workouts help to preserve the metabolic adaptations while you're still going through the period of muscular recovery. So I find it particularly helpful in that realm.
Okay. Another question regarding training. What about plateaus? People seem to throw that one around like, I got great results and then I don't know what happened. I hit a plateau. What are your thoughts on training plateaus?
Yeah, a lot of times, first thing is, and this is difficult with a lot of commercially available equipment, and it's a lot of why I have the equipment I have to try to work around this limitation. The first thing is you got to figure out, is the plateau a real plateau that's related to your physiology and your recovery? Or is this a plateau related to the equipment you're using with the protocol? So let me explain that in terms of a chest press machine in my facility. So in my facility, I'm using a MedX equipment that has a 500-pound weight stack. So I have 480 pounds of 20-pound plates all stacked up. And then directly on top of it, I have 18 pounds of plates that go in 2-pound intervals. And that weight stack moves a distance of 1 foot. So when you're selecting resistance for someone, you're actually selecting their workload, work being force times distance. So I can progress someone's weight. I can increase their weight by as little as 2 foot-pounds. Now, you go on your average piece of commercial equipment, you're going to have a weight stack that changes in 10-pound increments. But it's going to move a stroke length of 2 or 3 feet. So the smallest incremental weight change I can make is 2 foot-pounds. But at a commercial gym with your average piece of equipment, the smallest incremental weight change you can make would be 20 or 30 foot-pounds.
Yeah.
So it may be time for them to progress their weight, but when they put the pin in the next plate, they've jumped their resistance by 20 foot-pounds. And all of a sudden they're stuck, and they seem to have reached a plateau. Whereas in my gym, I can go up by 2-pound increments and still show continued progress because I can progress someone gradually. So sometimes that plateau is a false plateau, and you just got to ignore it and just go in and keep hitting it. And the way to tell the difference between the two is not just what you're doing on paper, but how you feel after the workout and between workouts. So if you hit this plateau and after a workout day for 2 to 3 days afterwards, you feel like hammered dog crap, then that's a real plateau. And you need to make some adjustments. Versus you're just not showing progress on paper, but you still feel great and you still feel strong. And that's probably a false plateau based on the limitations of your equipment. But if you hit a real plateau, what you need to do is to kind of slice and dice your workout. So instead of having 5 big movements, do some sort of split routine where you do 3 big compound movements and 2 smaller peripheral movements in a workout. That way you're allowing a little bit less of a metabolic wallop and metabolic workload in a given workout, so that you're still able to recover on a workout by workout basis. So when you first start and you do these 5 big movements, you're not that strong. Mm-hmm. And the amount of mechanical and metabolic work you're bringing to your body is significantly less than 6 months later when you may have doubled your strength. And now the mechanical and metabolic workload that you're bringing to your body is exponentially higher, and you're just exceeding your recovery ability.
Okay. Yeah. How does nutrition play a role in all this? You mentioned kind of eating paleo earlier. Yeah. What's your general nutritional approach look like?
Well, my approach with my clients, and my favorite thing to say to them is, look, the fact that you're here and you're getting stronger is great, but you cannot exercise your way out of a bad diet. And I can honestly say that the big turning point for visible aesthetic results in my clients at my facility correlated with when Mark Sisson's book came out.
The Primal Blueprint?
Yes, Primal Blueprint. When I was able to hand out Primal Blueprint, or Paleo Solution, or the One Diet, or any number of these books mm-hmm. that were user-friendly to my clients, it made all the difference in the world in terms of their actual visual results. And also, it's really important in terms of paying attention to the recovery side of the equation. In the exercise field, I find that it's very easy for everyone to geek out on the stimulus side of the equation and figure out, the next WOD or the next technique that's going to really just hammer the crap out of people, and not pay enough attention on the recovery side of the equation. Are you observing good sleep hygiene? Are you incorporating a meditative habit that helps you control stress and be mindful? Are you invoking a real whole food diet that delivers not just the nutrients, but the nutrients and all the other stuff that serve as cofactors that we don't even know yet exist because they're hidden in the context of the whole food? If you're doing all those things on the recovery side of the equation, then what goes on the stimulus side of the equation becomes much less important and doesn't have to be nearly as perfect as you think it does.
I see. Dr. Doug, can you move the camera a little bit? Sorry to interrupt.
Where we go?
Just be in the center, because we had this one guy, Ben Lynch was on, and he was off in the corner the whole time, and the way it crops in the middle, so his face was
okay.
Off.
Am I centered?
Yeah, you're great now. You're great now.
Yeah, because what I got showing me to me is like the size of a postage stamp, so I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay, great. So with nutrition, then, you're eating more whole foods, kind of paleo friendly. Is there anything you recommend that maybe wouldn't be considered paleo, or maybe a little different, or something you've seen really work that might be a little different? We're all up for opinions here.
The one thing that I would say is, I'm not a big supplement guy, but one thing that literature has borne out is that the intake of branched chain amino acids, whether that comes from whole food or a supplement, in the hours after an acute workout bout, does seem to enhance protein synthesis. It spares the gluconeogenic amino acids that are released during the exercise bout. There is some protein sparing done by that. And just from an anecdotal basis, it seems to enhance my sense of recovery after particularly hard workouts. So that's one thing that I do that is, not paleo in the primitive paleo sense.
Right.
Beyond that, there's not much else. And I try to be very open-ended with clients with regard to the paleo diet. I'm not very prescriptive in its application. I think the biggest, most important thing with regard to diet in an individual client is that it has to ultimately be their own approach that they own. So I try to give them the grossest heuristic possible for thinking about diet. And I tell them to think of diet as a straight line between themselves and the sun. And what I mean by that is you can go out in the sun and directly expose yourself to the sun. You're going to get vitamin D3. You're probably going to get a lot of other phytonutrients that we don't even yet know exist by just being out in the sun. The sun is the source of all nutrition. So it can act on phytoplankton. It can act on green plants who photosynthesize. You can eat those things and your body knows what to do with them. There are animals that eat those plants and phytoplankton, and you can eat those animals that ate those plants that photosynthesize. And then you can eat the animals that ate the animals that ate the animals, and on up the food chain. And as long as you stay in a straight line on that food chain, your body's going to know what to do with that and get the most nutrient density and proper dietary signaling out of that kind of material. When you go off of that straight line into things that are processed and manufactured and changed in a way that are signal disruptive to the body's mechanisms, that's when things fall apart and body composition starts to fail.
Okay, so the straight line from you to the sun, kind of getting it as close to that source as possible with vegetables, and then the things that ate the vegetables are animals. And so
that way you're not going down this false construct of worrying about what your macronutrient ratios are,
right?
Things that are really just sort of an artificial construct.
Okay. Yeah.
Of man, so to speak. I mean, you can be a paleo diet, and in a given day or a given week, it can be almost completely carbohydrate. And in another week or another season, it could be much, much more heavily weighted towards fat and very little carbohydrate, but it's still all natural whole food and paleo. And that's probably the way it works, in our real evolutionary past.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Doug, we're coming up. I want to ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
One we've been ending all the shows with is kind of what's your biggest lesson you've learned either the past year, the last 5 years in regards to health and fitness?
I think the thing that I kind of started out with at the beginning is the one message I really want to get across to people, because there's so much emphasis on hacking and becoming superhuman, is that you really have to realize that to become superhuman, you have to realize you're only human. And what that means is to rest before you get tired. That would be it.
All right. Body by Science is the book. Best place to get that is your website or Amazon or
Amazon, probably the easiest way to access it. It's available in the major bookstores as well, but it doesn't get front table display, so you got to dig for it in the bookstores. But Amazon's a great place to find it.
What else are you working on right now? Anything up and coming?
Well, I've co-authored a book with Robert Murphy, an economist, that is published by Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint Publishing, called The Primal Prescription.
Uh-huh.
And it is both an economic and healthcare treatise. It is an economic treatise showing how the healthcare market in this country got so distorted and disrupted by government intervention. And then the other half of the book is how you can extract the most value out of the system and how to survive the system if, through no fault of your own, you have to be sucked into it.
Okay.
So for people that are trying to navigate the complexities of our current healthcare system, that's my newest foray into writing.
What's it called again? One more time.
The Primal Prescription, and you can find that on Mark Sisson's website, but also on Amazon and in all major bookstores.
Okay.
Primal Prescription. Me and Bob Murphy, a really excellent economist.
Got it. Well, Doug, thanks for coming on the show. It was a blast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to try one of those slow workouts and let you know. Hopefully I'll have time to recover in between.
All right, man.
It's the most important part. Probably won't be the kind that I saw you do on that one video. That was another thing.
And I tell you what, it's all about the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. So just give it your best. Thanks,
Doug. Thanks for coming on.
You bet. Thank you, Clark.
Less is more. Apparently that applies with training frequency. That really blew my mind, that you can get results by 1 or 2 times a week if your diet and recovery is perfect. I mean, I think we all kind of know that deep down inside. I know that deep down inside, but it's harder to apply than to talk about. So the application, of course, was a really great emphasis today on the call. Paleohacks.com is the place to be. Blogs, articles, recipes. iTunes reviews really helps out, guys. And then Clark at clarkdanger.com if you want to get a hold of me. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys listening to this show. It's been fun over the past, 3 years or so. We've had a good time. A lot of good guests. That reminds me of the best of episode. If you haven't heard that was kind of our New Year's special. Just check it out. It's probably a month or 2 ago we did that. And that was a fun one to put together. So definitely check that one out. All right, that's it. Until next time, have a great week. We'll see you next Thursday.